All right, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you all here in person, and nice to see our city staff as well. We are going to start this meeting at 5:03. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Item 2, roll call. Ms. O'Connell.
Councilmember Borelli?
Here.
Councilmember No?
Here.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Here.
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Councilmember Thomas?
Here.
We have no ceremonial matters this evening, which brings us to item 4, closed session report, City Attorney Ibrahimi.
Thank you, Mayor. The council did meet in closed session today. They only met on the first item with respect to labor negotiations with Local 39. The council did not meet on item number 2. On item number 1, the council provided direction to staff.
Thank you. Item 5, adoption of the agenda.
Move for adoption.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Can we get a roll call?
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye. Item 6, announcements and presentations to the public. 6.1 is brief comments by the council. And let's start with Jackie.
I've been making my way through the 1,000-page fire MSR for LAFCO, and I watched the homeless presentation at the Board of Supervisors today.
All right, thank you. And Vice Mayor Zaragoza.
Nothing for me today. Thank you.
Okay. Dennis?
I spent some time going, first of all, we'll talk about the meeting with Pioneer Energy, but I spent quite a bit of time just going back and reviewing their history and information and budgets, and it's quite interesting. The other thing I did is I spent quite a bit of time going through the, what's the report on?
The strategic plan?
Yeah, the strategic plan for the for El Dorado Community. What is it? Opportunity Knox, COC, Community, yes.
Continuum of care.
Continuum of care, thank you. You think I'd know that by now. And I'll talk about Pioneer Energy later on, so that's about it.
Okay. Thank you. And Patty?
No report.
Okay. Couple quick comments. I want to give a big thank you and some recognition to Cleve and the city staff and volunteers that worked on that homeless camp cleanup on Lower Main Street a couple Saturdays ago. Makes a big difference, and really appreciate all the hard work on that. I also want to highlight the Empty Bowls fundraiser, which is on March 5th. It benefits the Upper Room and Hands for Hope, and the meal is provided by John Sanders with Old Town Grill. And if you would like to buy tickets for that, you can at edpjc.org. I participated in a focus group on a mobile mental health crisis center. I attended the 2x2 meeting with our counterparts at the county. And I also attended the EDOC COC board meeting and reviewed the plan. And this is the community plan to end homelessness in El Dorado County. EDOC COC is looking for public feedback on this. It's a really important plan. It's going to be about how all of the homeless dollar, the funding is going to be spent locally to address homelessness. So I really want to encourage the public to go to edoccoc.org and take a look at the plan and provide feedback on that. And that is all my comments.
Can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
And I'm going to bring it up now because, more people are here, but at some point I would like to, do we know if the county got an affirmation on whether they're going to extend the comment period on that?
I didn't hear a final answer, but the initial was that it was not received favorably, their request. But I don't think a final answer was given.
Yeah,
Jackie,
we
did you
also
hear
sent-
different?
I watched the presentation, that went from 10 to noon, and then they were going to have a discussion starting at 3:15, so
Right.
they could still be talking about it right
Right.
now. I don't
So
think we have
there
a-
may be different information by the time they're done, but I don't know yet.
I mean, we don't even really have time to get it on our agenda, let alone provide any meaningful contact, and yet
Right.
I don't want to get into the subject matter because it's an important thing that we do need to talk about.
Comments are due on March 4th. Our next meeting is March 8th, so if there was any desire for the council to look at something, you would need to talk about perhaps scheduling a special meeting. But
We did send a letter today, Kara and I, to the COC asking for an extension of time to the 23rd for public comments. My understanding is that it did not go over today, an extension, but we'll see what type of response that we get to our request.
Then
I think we should do it, whether they give it to us or not. We should
Agreed.
talk about that and submit our things if they don't want to do it. I submitted to them back in December, that I didn't feel that they were doing enough public outreach to agencies, and they said, oh, well, just wait until, we release the plan. Well, the plan is released, and they need to give adequate time to get those that haven't been done yet.
So I see two different tracks here. One is we hold a special meeting if they do not approve it, or they approve it and we have it at our regularly scheduled meeting, and we hope that they will come and do a presentation. And
Well, it'll be too late though for us
No,
for
if
any
they-
input.
if they do extend the deadline.
If they extend
Right.
it, but did
So under future agenda items tonight, we could,
provide that
Could-
direction at
yes.
provide that direction at
on
that
that.
time.
Okay.
Yes,
So that would be
if
next
you.
week.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Because they took 3 years to do it, and now they give us 30 days to comment.
Yeah,
on it.
that doesn't make sense.
I don't think we even got 30 days.
Maybe
No,
they
it wasn't even 30 days.
maybe
It
they
was-
don't want our input.
Last week was the presentation to the board. It was
Today was.
No, today was.
No,
Today.
to on
Oh,
EDOC,
yeah,
the
EDOC
EDOC board
board.
ourselves.
Correct.
We heard it on, was it Wednesday? Last Wednesday? And so from last Wednesday to March 4th was basically the comment period. It was
2.5
nothing.
weeks.
3 weeks.
So
Brilliant.
we can discuss this further in future agenda items.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, moving on to item 7, consent calendar. All items listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted in one motion by roll call vote unless any member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion. Let's open the consent calendar up to public comment at this time. If there's anyone in the public that would like to speak on items 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, or 7.4, feel free to step up to the podium. Okay, we will close public comment on the consent calendar and bring it back to council.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Ms. O'Connell, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye. Moving on to item 8, public comment on non-agendized item. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. State law prohibits the council from acting on items not listed on the agenda except by special action of the city council under specified circumstances. Please limit your time to 3 minutes. There's a clock up here, and you can monitor yourself. You are not allowed to make personal attacks on individuals or comments which are slanderous or invade an individual's personal privacy. Let's start with oral communications, and then I'll come back to written communications. So we'll open it. Yep, step up to the podium. Please state your name for the record.
Peter Myers, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to approach the bench or the console with some photographs that I'd like to share so that everybody can really take a look-see.
You have to,
Provide with the city clerk.
Sir, if you could please provide those to the city clerk, and she'll pass them out.
That would be ideal, thank you. Anyway, what it is, I live on Wilson, which is on the east side of town, and I'm here with a couple of our homeowners that reside on Wiltsey along on Martin Lane and up on Lane Road as well. So what had happened is
Is his mic on? It is.
so February 5th, I decided I'm going to take a walk up on section 127. I decided to go up on the east side, or excuse me, the north side and the south side of Heritage Lane. And I was amazed to see what is going on up there in terms that it's a potential serious fire and a safety issue, meaning that they're using fire accelerants for open pit fires, and I have photographs here to show. And I'd like to show this to the county chief. Here we go. Mayor, I would like to show this as well. Somebody pass that around. Now, there's three photographs there. The first photograph that you see is definitely camping fuel that they're using. So definitely you can't tell me now that they're not starting fires. The second photograph is an indication of an open fire that is actually on the south side of Heritage Lane, that's up on the hill, that they've actually cleared out a manzanilla grove. And as you can see on that photograph, that's probably about a 2-foot open fire. Now, if you look at that photograph, I don't see a bucket of water. I don't see a fire extinguisher. Does anybody see that there? Because I sure don't. So what I decided to do today is I thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at your ordinance 1698. And I've highlighted everything that really is in terms of what is funding of a public nuisance, what are definitions, and all these definitions actually indicate we have a potential serious issue up there. Now, we all know what happened with Caldor, and I'm just trying to say right now that I understand that it's not a homeless transient issue, it is a public fire safety issue. Because when you're actually starting to have open fires in a manzanilla grove, that gets very hot and it's going to take off. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to address everybody here, because it's just not our issue in the community as homeowners. It's everybody's issue. And I know that it's not a homeless issue now, because forget about dealing with the homelessness. It's a fire safety issue. What are we going to do to prevent another Caldor fire from happening in our own backyard? Any suggestions?
Mr. Myers, this isn't a question and answer. You can present your comments to the council, and we'll answer questions at the end after comment period has ended.
So in other words, I'll sit down and then we can have a Q&A period about this?
This is not a Q&A period, but if there's questions that are of community importance, we will address those at the end of public comment.
Okay, because this is a community importance issue,
It
right?
absolutely is.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing
Thank
it
you.
to us.
If I may, Mayor, just for clarification, items that are not agendized on the council calendar cannot be discussed, of course, in any kind of detail. However, the council may direct staff with specific direction, may ask for future agenda items to be brought, but we will not be having any kind of a robust discussion on such items.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. It's Sue Rodman, Placerville resident. And I've been following all of the things that have happened with the homeless and with campfires and with people who don't clear their property. And now I hear that the county has given us, 4 days to make some kind of comment about their 1,000 pages worth of stuff. And they've been working on it for 3 years. But, I think that, yes, you definitely need to get a hold of the county and tell them that that is not acceptable. It's not acceptable to the public who lives here. We would like to have a chance to make comments on this, too. And it doesn't sound like we have that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Come on up.
Hi, my name's Patricia McConaughey, and I'm a transplant from San Francisco, and so I've only lived in the community here of Placerville, El Dorado County for less than 3 years. I've been 2 years now down on Wiltsey Road, right across the street from Lumstead Park. And so I became active in the community because I really enjoy living here very much. And I'm third-generation San Franciscan, so I'm greatly familiar with homelessness and the obstacles that it presents for everyone, for the community, for the police officers, for the residents. In San Francisco, our libraries are filled with the homeless every day because that's the only safe place for them to be. And so I came here, and I was happy to see that, in my estimation, that the homeless problem wasn't insurmountable as it is in San Francisco, because there's so many people, right? There's 850,000 people, and there's lots of people that are poor, mental health issues, and all various things that have happened to these people. And I feel really moved and touched on this topic. So my house faces the Lumstead Park that was built by the Rotary Club, or wasn't built, but money was contributed by the Rotary Club. I'm recently becoming a member of the Rotary Club, as well as, I guess, 8 other organizations within the community here, because this is my place of retirement now. And anyway, I'm also active in the Native Daughters of the Golden West in regard to Empty Bowl and different projects that we work on to help the community. It really troubled me last night to go to bed and had to kick on the heat, even though I'm like very frugal, and kick on the heat because it was so cold. And there was a woman camping there at the picnic table for the last 3 days across from the play structure. And it really was disconcerting to me and just sad that this woman is out there on a night like last night, and she's gone this evening. She was there for 3 days, and it was sad for me to go to bed thinking, you know, I got my electric blanket, I'm warm and toasty, I got the kitty cat, I got snacks, I'm good. And, you know, to know that she was there in the cold. And so I'm concerned for these people. I'm concerned about the dangers of fire. It was my first experience living here in our county to have a first-hand experience with the Caldor fire. And so I'm over 30, obviously, and it was just so shocking to me to have that so up close and personal. So I'm very invested in our community, and I was talking with Peter, who's my neighbor. I'm on Wiltsey, and right, like I say, directly across the street. Sometimes I hear screaming, and I was thinking, I don't know, this is my first time coming to one of your meetings here to get acquainted with our city government, and I think the problem is so overwhelming and insurmountable in so many areas for these poor folks, and that I think we might need, or maybe there already is, like coalitions.
Patricia, I'm sorry, could you please wrap up your comments?
I will.
We're at past the limit.
I will. I'll stop. Too verbose. As far as community involvement, and I'd be more than happy to be involved in any community coalition to help work with your group. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Hi, my name is David Lewin. I live on Martin Lane, and I'm here to support my neighbors. I'm also concerned about the fire danger, and I'm also concerned about the health issues on Hangtown Creek, because my house backyard borders Hangtown Creek, and we've had campers back there and bathers back there, and I think the creek is probably contaminated from the upper part of the homeless, and it's I think it's a serious situation. I'm just here for support. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Bill McLean. I've lived in Diamond Springs for about a little over 10 years, just moved to Placerville about 3.5 years ago, and I'm just getting an office down here at the Midtown Mall. So I'm getting active in the what's happening around Placerville. I, along with Peter, am very concerned about the fire hazard that's involved with open fires and accelerants being used for these fires. It won't take much to go ahead and have that whole neighborhood go up. So I would appreciate some comments on that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, all. My name is Robert Matthews. I'm a fairly long-time resident up here in the area since 1984, Camino and here. I'm familiar with the traditional hazards in the area. We've lost a cat to the hawks, and I've seen a lot of other people who've lost multiple cats to hawks, owls, coyotes, what have you. I'm familiar with, just 100 yards off the freeway here, bears tromping through, heading for the blackberries, mountain lions tromping through our front yard, looking for deer. Doesn't bother me. The fires, that's a slightly different story. We're talking an area back there where there is no way to stop a fire if it gets started. You can't get people into that area to stop a fire. It's just going to take out the whole hillside. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, seeing no other commenters, I'm going to close public comment. And we'll address a couple of these items. First, Sue, about the EDOC COC, I just want to clarify that the EDOC COC is not El Dorado County government. It is a separate board that is made up of community stakeholders that is largely in charge of the majority of homelessness state funding that comes into the region. And their plan was released on February 15th. It's been a strategic plan that we've been waiting for years, and they are seeking public comment before it's approved by March 4th. So I would really like everybody who's concerned about this issue, which seems to be everyone in this room, as should be the case, to make a comment on that. And then, Chief Friend, would you like to address the Lumsden Park homeless encampments?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Actually, this is probably going to bleed into 3 different departments. That's how complex the Lumsden Park issue is. As far as law enforcement activities, that's obviously our department. We have code enforcement issues, and then we have fire issues. Speaking specifically on the open fire issues, we have a zero tolerance on our open fire ordinance. So, as I've explained previously, and I understand you guys, I don't think I've ever seen you here before. Have you? It's an automatic citation or arrest if there's an open fire. Now you get into other issues of trying to enforce any kind of camping. Last year was tough with us with the governor's order to not displace any of the homeless encampments. Just created a myriad of issues for us to try to effectively mitigate any kind of homeless situation. Not only the fire, other issues that are associated with that. So we are aware of it. We're aware of Lumsden. We're up there quite a bit. We encourage the community to call us if they hear anything or see anything, and we'll respond out.
Sir, it's not Q&A.
Well, hold on a second.
No,
as I said,
nope, sir, we can't.
Look at, all I'm going to say is look at the photograph of the propane tank. I understand.
Sir, please, yeah.
Okay.
If you would like to leave your email address with our city clerk, we can follow up with you. Did you have any other comments on that, or did you?
I think Pierre, Lumsden's a nightmare for us. I know that there's a ownership dispute. It's private property, so that's what complicates the matter for us.
Mayor, if I can just briefly comment.
our staff we did have a rapport with the property owner at one time, probably more than a year ago now, and the owner there's a tenant that lives on the property, and the owner entered into some agreement with that tenant, and that tenant was affecting defensible space measures on the property and cleaning up a lot of the garbage. But we have received a notice from the lending institution that the property is going into foreclosure, and we have not been in contact with the owner now, and so the property is kind of in limbo. So it is very problematic for us. I've been on the site. I do recognize a lot of these pictures of what's out there, and it's a bad situation, but we're sort of, well, between a rock and a hard place because we have nobody, at least at the moment, that we can try and negotiate with or take enforcement action against at this time.
All right, thank you. And Cleve, would you like to touch on what we're trying to do with vegetation management to address some of these issues?
Well, in terms of primarily what we've been working on is related to public property, and we're looking at ways to remove that. We have some funding in place to do some of that work, and community services is working on that. Private property is a whole other issue, and it's a difficult one. We've gone after grants in the past to try to help get funding for that. I know that the Fire Safe Council also is going after grants to try to help private property owners in that realm. But it's an extremely difficult one to handle and find funding to actually take care of those issues. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Does it
Sir, public comment is closed.
Does it
But
take a fire to get reactive? Instead of being proactive, you have to be reactive? That's all I'm asking.
Regina, do we have any written communication?
No, Madam Mayor, we do not.
All right. Thank you. So that brings us to the discussion and action items, item 12.1. And this is a resolution opposing state initiative by the California Business Roundtable Taxpayer Protection and Government Accountability Act. Mr. Morris has his staff report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item was requested to be on our agenda by Councilmember Thomas at your last meeting. And I don't know how much detail you want me to go through on this. There's quite a bit here. But basically, this act is being sponsored by the California Business Roundtable, and it's called the Protection and Government Accountability Act, which may be a little bit deceiving in title. But there are several things. I'm just going to hit kind of the highlights, and then I can try to maybe talk about a couple things. Number one, limit voter authority and accountability. Number two, restrict local fee authority to provide local services. 3, restrict authority of state and local governments to issue fines and penalties for violations of law. That's an interesting one. And then number 4, restrict local tax authority to provide local services. I guess a big example that I would provide, and this may be, you may have different views on this, but for example, Measure L, which we've been able to provide a great amount of water, sewer, and street rehabilitation and get those up to par where they should be, likely would not have passed if this law were in place today. They'll be much more difficult for those to be passed and even to get on the ballot. So,
And why?
Because we don't know.
I mean, I don't think that's what the people understand, what 2/3.
in terms of how those could happen, but it tries to control that and make it so that it's less likely that those would pass. Other things that are in here allows corporations to dodge enforcement, jeopardizes some of the services. If some of these were to pass and we weren't able to get the revenues we need to provide services, those services could go away. Those are the main things without going into a lot of detail on it. But I think that from what I've read and what I've gone through, and I have got a lot of this information came from the League of California Cities. For example, I was just talking to our mayor today, I guess it was, about the fact that it states that it restricts the way that we can collect TIM fees and might even make it so that we couldn't collect TIM fees. Those improvement mitigation funds, I guess is what it is. Those are very important for new development when it comes in, to be able to have the funds to provide the services in terms of water, sewer, and streets to meet the demands of that organization. So those type of things are very concerning to us, and having the funding that we would need in the future to provide services and improvements for our community. So with that, I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Steve?
This, in my opinion, this is akin to defunding the police. It's defunding cities, and it's reducing or restricting our ability for us as a community to make decisions that we choose in our community on how we want to raise funds and how we want to spend those funds. Right. And I think we have had some great examples of where we have done that very successfully, and to the benefit of our community. And it's our community, it's our money, it's our funding, it's our opportunity to improve our community. And this is not only that. I heard somebody say, and I don't know how true it is, that some of these could be even retroactive in terms of going back and removing some of the Measure L and Measure H funds that we have created for supporting our wastewater treatment, our waters, and our roads. And it's just really akin to defunding cities and more centralizing control with the state and reducing our ability to control our destiny in our own little town here. So
it's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, we wouldn't be able to function because, if you go into how we get a lot of our funding, this just stops it, and we couldn't function, really.
When I read it, it really read like a special interest group. I mean, it talks about taxpayer protection, and it doesn't go into anything about all the tax or the state mandates put on all of us. It doesn't even address some of the base issues. So, yeah.
And it prohibits voters from deciding how they want tax money spent, which,
at a local level.
At a local level, which, that is really, that's really a frightening thing, to not be able to vote on how you want your dollars spent.
Right.
So, all right. Any other questions or comments? We'll open this up to public comment at this time. Anyone wishing to speak on item 12.1?
This looks like how to defund the cities, how to take away from the voters all of the initiatives that we can ever put forward. I mean, I worked on Measure H and Measure L, and the public came along with us and said this is a good thing to do for our city. And I think this bill would eliminate that. And that scares me because it means then how do we fix things that we need to be fixed in our city if they won't let us do what we need to do locally? I mean, that's the power of the initiative. I thought that was guaranteed by the Constitution, that this is something that they couldn't take away, but apparently they're trying.
Thank you for your comment. All right, I see no other public comment on this item, so we'll bring it back to council for a motion or further discussion.
I'd like to move that we adopt the resolution as presented.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Ms. O'Connell, can we get a roll call vote?
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Saragosa?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, item 12.2. This is a community services negotiation and agreement with Pride Industries, and Director Zeller has this report.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Staff is looking for authorization basically for me to negotiate an agreement with Pride Industries for the custodial and light landscape maintenance services for the city. This contract, if approved for negotiation, would replace nearly identically the services that Mother Lode Rehabilitation Enterprises has performed for the city for the past 27 years, minus the flower baskets. They're still able to do that particular service for us, and that will be negotiated in the spring. But what I have in front of you here is basically the work that we've put forward and a potential contract to get those services back in service for the city. It's worth noting that Pride Industries, their mission aligns very closely with Mother Lode Rehabilitation Enterprises. Their stated mission is to seek to provide their clients who have disabilities with employment, education, and self-sufficiency. It's also worth noting that Pride Industries, although based in Roseville, they are going to initially staff the contract with their own team of landscapers until their rehab services department places clients in these roles, which will come from El Dorado County and Placer County. Pride Industries does have an office in Placerville on Main Street in the Midtown Plaza, and also their company information is included in the proposal, which is in the staff report. Specifically, the services they're looking to replace are mostly cleaning and janitorial services, custodial services, but also some light landscaping, which would include, we have some backpack blowers that are strategically positioned in different locations for our parks that Mother Lode used to use to mostly blow sidewalks and picnic areas. And so they would be doing that in addition to the other cleaning. And the page 8 of their proposal has the specific activities that they would be taking over. And the pricing is on page 10. It's worth noting that in the list of duties, they're taking care of the parking garage and Main Street and our 8 public parking lots. That's year-round, as well as Goldbug Park and the city water reclamation facility restrooms, and also our public restrooms at the Mosquito bus station and also downtown. 7.5 months of the time, they are going to be working to take care of City Park, Lions Park, Rotary, and Lumsden Park. And it might be a little confusing for the public, but the way that they put their pricing together is that you can see the city parks listed on their price list, and those parks are going to be, even though the service is only going to be 7.5 months, they have incorporated them in a 12-monthly fee in order to make it more straightforward. And so that is the proposal that's before you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Terry. Are there any questions? Yes, Brenda.
Yeah, Terry, did Moore only do 7.5 months?
Yes, that's the contract that I inherited when I got here in 2019. And so they did that for the time that I've been here up and through the end of last year, calendar year.
So our staff covers the other 4?
A lot of, like Lions Park restrooms, we close those when it gets really cold. And there's not a whole lot of use out there for the lower park. And we leave the upper restrooms open. So it's pretty much identical to the services we've had before.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Terry? No? Okay, we will open this item up to public comment.
Terry, I think last time I was here, I asked if we could get a trash bin at Lumsden Park, and that was 6 months ago. Nothing's happened, because I tell you what, that trash bin gets overloaded within a day. And what I'd also like to suggest is, even up where the pond is, maybe you could put one up there as well, because you get fishing line up there, you'll get all kinds of stuff up there. Right now, we've got a couple of tires that are up there. People have just left. So maybe, how about just requesting 2 more trash bins would be fine in Lumsden Park.
Thank you for your comment.
Sue Rodman. When I worked for the Forest Service, we had Pride Industries come in to do our janitorial service, and they did a good job.
Thank you for your comment. All right, I see no one else stepping up to the podium, so we will close public comment on 12.2 and bring it back to the council for further discussion or a motion.
Terry, I guess I did have one question. Did we do any type of, was it like an RFP, or did we just sort of reach out to Pride? I was wondering if there's other, I mean, it seems like a good
source in the fact that I feel like the feedback I've gotten from the city, the community, and other staff is that it was very unfortunate to lose the connection we had with Mother Lode Rehabilitation Enterprises, because they were providing a service that I think is invaluable for the community of people with disabilities, and that is what we were seeking at that point. And so we did treat it as a sole source. I think that it would be very difficult to find another agency or organization that could do all of the requested things that we have without becoming a little bit more cost prohibitive than what we've got in front of us.
Okay, thank you.
I think your other source of opportunity didn't take the job. This organization is a perfect fit for this, and in my opinion, and the price is very reasonable, and it gives people in our community that have challenges, disabilities, a place to really have a meaningful impact, and it also, it helps us, gives them some sense of community and support. So, and I think it's good.
And it relieves our staff too of
Yeah. They've done a great job. Moore has done a great job over the years of doing what they've done as well, and I can't begin to express my appreciation for Moore as they step away from this and move on. So,
All right. Daniel, want to make a motion?
I'd like to move that we authorize Terry to enter in negotiations on these issues.
Second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Roll call.
Councilmember No.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza.
Aye.
Mayor Taylor.
Aye. All right, moving on to item 12.3. This is an interesting one. Receive and file the Main Street Trunk Sewer Alternative Conceptual Study and provide direction for the selection of the improvement alternatives. And City Engineer Neves has this report.
Better pictures. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good evening, Mayor Taylor, Vice Mayor Zaragoza, Council Members No, Borelli, and Thomas. Good to see your faces. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our sewer line relocation, Clay Street to Locust, which has been a project on our radar for quite some time. And also, it just really gives me an opportunity to talk nerd to you, so I really love this opportunity to talk anything engineering. So some of the origins of our project is, removing our sewer mains out of the creek has actually been a citywide goal of ours for quite some time. And the reason for this is it's obviously tied to risks of sewer spills in the creek, hazardous waste contamination, and all of these things can lead to potential fines from the state as well as the environmental impacts. Sewer lines in the creek are actually a source of infiltration into our system. You may have heard over the years reference to I&I, infiltration and inflow, or inflow and infiltration, they're used synonymously, and impacts to our wastewater treatment plant too. What this can do is when you have infiltration in a sewer main, it can lead to a dramatic peak in flow at the plant, and that can cause damage to plant operations, unintended discharge into the creek, and that can also result in potential violations and fines from the states. So what is, just as a quick overview, because I know we don't talk about it all the time, but just a quick overview of what influent infiltration actually is. You'll see on the upper left there's a little video of infiltration, which this is the situation that we're trying to avoid with pipes in the creek. And so what happens is when the water surface level, either it be groundwater table or the creek water surface level itself, goes above the pipe is then put under pressure. And what you have is you'll have a pipe that leaks internally like that, where water actually pours into it. It can happen at joints and cracks on the pipe, but they do their very best to make these systems watertight, but when it's operated under pressure, like anything else operated under pressure, it'll eventually be an issue. And then something we talk about, but that's actually not what this particular situation leads us to. So a little bit of history on this particular project, because, as Council's aware, we've been bringing several sewer projects before you over the last year or so, including the one on Cedar Ravine, but this one happens to be from Clay to Locust. And this project was actually created as part of the 2011-2012 Adopted Capital Improvement Program budget. And a design through a grant through El Dorado County Water Agency was developed in 2014 to place a relocated sewer main beneath the El Dorado Trail with crossings below the creek channel, and it would still retain the use of a lateral or a fly line into the creek channel. One thing really quick, you're going to hear me use the terms fly line and lateral interchangeably. It basically represents a smaller collection line that carries the material from a private service and puts it into the main collection main. So oftentimes they're anywhere from 6 to 8 inches, sometimes 10 inches is the biggest lateral or fly line that you'll typically see. So that's something I just kind of wanted to call attention to. And the other part with this current design that we have on hand from 2014, it actually does not fully remove the sewer system or its components from the creek or risk to high groundwater table. It's actually susceptible still to high flows and debris. If any of you have had an opportunity to walk down the creek, you'll actually see an accumulation of debris over just outside of the Independent. There's some pretty large debris over there right now. That's the kind of stuff that can knock out a sewer main during high flows. Oops, got a little punch happy, sorry. There we go. Just the one. Don't move. Okay, existing sewer system today. So what's out there today? So as it stands right now, we have a 16-inch sewer main that is located in the creek. That's on the north side of the creek. Parallel to that, on the south side of the creek channel, is a 6 to 8-inch sewer main. And both of these are actually quite visible from the El Dorado Trail. That's what we're trying to resolve. Good grief, sorry. Just the one. There we go. Sorry. So the 2014 design proposed moving the main out of the creek on the north side and moving it into the El Dorado Trail. It also proposed fly lines and creek crossings that are still located within the creek channel. Some of the facets of that design is that the sewer main itself was very deep in order to make the connections underneath. If you have a creek channel, the intention was to have the pipe go even below underground on that creek channel. So you're talking about a sewer main that's 4 to 5 feet deeper than the bottom of the creek channel. So it's pretty deep. It was between 16 to 20 feet deep, which is very deep. The other issue is it also, as I mentioned before, when you put pipes under a groundwater table or under a creek water surface level, you introduce infiltration, which leads to a pressurized system. So basically, it's unfortunately a setup for future infiltration as the system ages. So, because it does still reserve a portion of the public collection system in the creek, the fly line, the other issue is the fly line is actually connected to the existing creek wall. I'm sure that we've all been aware of and we've experienced just right outside this door over here that the creek walls along Hangtown Creek are starting to show their age in terms of material and structure failure. So that is kind of another can of worms to open. The other concern that we had with the 2014 design is it didn't really include some pretty big ticket items, including creek diversion, dewatering, and significant trenching and shoring. So those can heft up a price tag on a project pretty quickly. Oops. Okay. Hold on. Sorry. Okay. There we go. The proposed Main Street alternative, and also, meant to call this attention to you too. In your packet are the exhibits of everything we're talking about. So you don't have to depend on the little presentation that I've handed you. You should all have these in front of you too. So the proposed Main Street alternative would pull the creek or the main out of the creek and would actually put it in Main Street. Our system already has a fair amount located in Main Street, so it would essentially be still consistent with our facility goals, our facility mapping goals in terms of getting them out of the creek, getting it into or close to a road to make it easily accessible and maintainable, and it kind of satisfies the other concerns and risk factors associated with having a sewer in the creek. So that's the main alignment. Let's see if I can do this and not go 9 steps ahead here. Oh, good grief. There we go. So the proposed Main Street alternative. I wanted to provide this one so you could actually see what would happen during construction. The setup of the staging area with the K-rail. They would take up the entire sidewalk space, and they would take up the shoulder of Main Street. But this option still does allow for two-way traffic on Main Street. Typically, we don't like to put pipes underneath sidewalk for obvious reasons, but the reason for this was that it still allowed two-way construction, or two-way traffic during construction, which is a big deal on Main Street. This wouldn't necessarily require night work, whereas if you got Main Street down to one lane, it would probably require night work. So just something to consider. And then a couple options that were proposed in the study. Let's see if I can do this. I went from going too fast to not at all. There we go. So option one, moving forward, I'm going to talk about the various options on how we deal with the actual individual services to each of the properties that will be affected by this project. So option one, I kind of consider a hybrid of the Main Street alternative, but then also some of the 2014 aspects too. This alternative includes pulling the sewer away from the creek, but it actually still uses laterals to convey the collection in the sewer main in Main Street. Sewer laterals on the walls and they are still in the creek channel. So we do have an element of this alternative that still has sewer in the creek. Oh, good grief. Option two. So option two actually goes ahead and pulls everything. Laterals and services and the main are all out of the creek. They're all directional towards the south, towards Main Street. The only hitch with this alternative is it does still propose a fly line, but it's actually parallel to the collection main. So when they would install the main on Main Street, they would actually be installing the 16-inch sewer main and then like a 6-inch fly line or lateral next to it. So we looked at this alternative, and we were warming up to some of the concept of having the lateral stay out of the creek channel and the influence of the creek. So that was something to take away from that. grief. Sorry. Okay, option 3 takes the main off the main, or it takes the sewer main out of the creek, puts it in Main Street, and then it actually still continues with a small piece of the laterals and fly lines, much smaller segments, still in the creek, still on the creek walls, but it does have some of the collection laterals that you saw in option 2. So it does still have similarities. This report and discussing it with staff and then kind of thinking it through operationally for maintenance. Outside of the report, staff actually wanted to bring forward to you a 4th option, which is our option 2-3 hybrid. I'm not going to push it again because if I do it again, it's going to go like 3 spaces ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Dave. Thanks. Thank you. So option 2-3 hybrid. This option actually moves the sewer main into Main Street. There is no parallel fly line next to the main, which is a cost savings. There are direct 6-inch laterals that serve the properties without being in the creek channel or attached to the retaining walls. And there's no sewer in the creek, and again, we don't touch the retaining walls. So in looking at the feasibility report when we received it, we actually kind of thought it through. We reached out to the designer and talked through this option. There is some significant cost savings in terms of not having that secondary fly line, and we can size up the lateral connections large enough to take in those independent flows. A 6-inch lateral is decent sized, and we can get our CCTV camera down those, things to consider when we do maintenance and regular routine operations on sewer mains. So it's all well and good, but we have to make sure we can afford it. So we looked at some cost estimates here. The 2014 estimate, the only reason why we didn't move forward with that was we didn't have the construction funding for it. We didn't have Measure L. We had Measure H, but Measure H only received $500,000 a year for projects, and so we had other projects that kind of cut in front of this one since the line was still operational. Time's a ticking on that line, though. It's really starting to show its age. There's some segments of it that every time I walk by on the creek, I just kind of shudder. And then some of the segments that if you would like to walk down towards Independent, you'll actually see the debris. So all it takes is a large enough log to knock it out. So, but what we decided to do was to bring that 2014 estimate up to realistic today numbers. We did an update, and the update of the bid items came in at about $2,018,000. That doesn't include, as I mentioned earlier, the design didn't really address some pretty big ticket items such as trench dewatering, creek diversion, and work adjacent to the creek. That can be an issue. The Main Street alternative is estimated at $2.1 million, and it does include those big ticket items. So there was some comfort in that. Thanks, Dave. So some of the pros and cons for considering this Main Street alternative. It does reduce the potential for influent infiltration, or actually just infiltration, reduces the risk of damage to our sewer system. It reduces the risk of creek contamination and resultant fines. There's minimal facilities remaining in the creek, and which would make it inaccessible. Easier access to private services for regular maintenance for the individual property owners, too. And construction is not as dependent on creek levels and flows. That was the other thing about that 2014 design, not doing any work. You can't reach the existing sewer main because it'd be underwater. And then this proposal has 1 creek crossing down towards Clay Street versus 4+ creek crossings. Construction sequencing can minimize interruptions to the private business services as well. So, for example, when we're constructing, I'll use the Independent again because they're a great business here in town. We love them. We don't want to affect their businesses. They're closed Mondays and Tuesdays. We can certainly tie them into the new system on a Monday and a Tuesday. Just making those small concessions and considerations for the businesses along the way. Some of the cons are that obviously there is traffic control on Main Street versus the 2014 design, which was all contained on the trail. And future repairs are considered more costly under Main Street than under the El Dorado Trail for traffic control setup, construction staging, and also for materials too. You know, it gets a little bit more costly when you're ripping up concrete versus asphalt or even just gravel to reach your pipe. But some of the benefits, too, that actually, we talked about easier access to private services for regular maintenance, and we also talked about, the benefit of maintenance. Maintaining a 20-foot deep sewer main is a big deal. That would be very challenging, and my wonderful counterpart in Public Works just gave me the side eye. So I really don't want to do that to him or the lovely gentlemen and folks that work with him. So, so with that being said, tonight's requested action is to receive and file the Main Street Trunk Sewer Alternative Conceptual Study, which was included as part of the agenda packet electronically, since it is a quite hefty report, and provide direction to staff on the preferred improvement and alternative, and ultimately authorizing the engineering department to proceed with final design of the selected alternative. So once we receive direction, the next steps would be that we would write up an RFP for design services and send it out. I also want to highlight the fact that this project, because it is removing a creek from a protected channel, removing a sewer from a protected creek channel, it's a very attractive candidate to outside grant funding sources, which is helpful to, whatever money, local money we don't spend on this to get this work done is money that we can spend on other local projects like paving and everything else too. So this is certainly a worthy project, and it's even, more benefit to the community if we can have somebody else help us pay for the construction of it. So that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Rebecca, for that very detailed report and background information on this project. Do we have any questions for our engineer? Yes.
First, thank you, Rebecca, for a very thorough report, and I think just for the public, it shows you for a very small piece of land. I mean, this is an expensive endeavor. So when we look at our Measure H&L funds, those are finite funds, and it's why we can't do multiple projects all around town simultaneously, because just in this one alone, it's $2 million. Question, Rebecca, in terms of economies of scale, when looking at sort of the Clay Street realignment, is there any economies of scales that can be brought into this, assuming everything moves forward on Clay Street as well? We might be able to save some money by maybe doing some of these things simultaneously?
Sure. So when Clay Street moves forward, we will have an opportunity for economies of scale if that sequences up correctly. We are no stranger to putting multiple different funding sources on a project and on a contract. We are able to separate out the work and send it out to simultaneous bid, or we include it as one bid package and bifurcate out that work for, what I'll use our Upper Broadway project as an example. We had, different funding sources, both federal and state, and we had to actually track the bid items by quantities or by percentages or by a prorated share between us and other partner agencies. So it's not too unfamiliar of a task for us to be able to do that and incorporate those economies of scale. And it does have actual real benefit, and the convenience to the public is huge, because you're really only getting into it under one season of construction versus breaking out and doing it several pieces at a time, which sometimes just feels like a slow death. The other thing too, you said something actually very important. You talked about this project. If we really do want to get grant funding on this, because basically this project, regardless of whatever alternative you select, translates to a 1 full year of Measure L revenue, and that is a big deal. We really hold tight to those, local dollars, and so this would be a great opportunity to go seek out grant funding.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Rebecca, so along with the grant, would that come from like a fish and game or water resources, or is there a possibility of multi?
Yes.
Okay. That makes it even better.
So
I was looking at the design, and I was thinking for long-term maintenance, wouldn't it be easier to put the line under the road than the sidewalk? But I think what your explanation is because of the traffic is why we're putting it under the sidewalk.
There's another part to it, too, that I really wanted to daylight. So, we're actually required to have, contrary to some existing lines in town, we're actually required to have 10-foot separation between sewer and water. If we don't have that separation, we actually have to apply for a waiver request from the state. So it's contingent upon the approval of that waiver request. We've done it before. We did have a small segment on Mosquito that I think got within 8 feet of a water line, so it's not a dangerous situation. We actually have some areas in town that are on our project list that basically separate water and sewer from being in the same trench. So anything is really an improvement, but I didn't want to lead with this alternative that is at the mercy of the approval of a waiver from the state. Do we want to look at pursuing that alternative? Yes, we will. But moving it out of the creek and the trail and moving it into Main Street is really kind of, once we can get it to Main Street, we'll work with what we have with the space. It's pretty confined, but we can work with it.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
Rebecca, I've got a couple questions. You mentioned that for option 2-3 hybrid, we could run those lateral lines during the time that businesses were closed.
Yes.
To reduce the impact on them.
Yes.
Which is great, but what about, how long would the sidewalk be torn up? Because that, for a restaurant like the Independent, that would have significant impact on their business if the sidewalk to their front door is torn up.
Yeah, it would basically be a trench cut versus like the whole, you're talking about for the main?
Yeah.
We would have to make some pedestrian access concessions, but we could do it. As far as services, if we are able to get the waiver and put it in the street, you're only looking at trench width cuts. So these are all things that we will absolutely look at. The least amount of impacts. It makes it easier for the fluidity of the job. It makes it more cost efficient, and it's received a little bit easier. So we certainly are sensitive to that. We would work with the Independent. We do this on every single one of our projects as far as pedestrian impacts and access routing and things like that.
Okay, so do you have any sense for how long the sidewalk or the road, the trench would be, wide open?
Well, one thing that's actually really nice is we can go segment by segment versus opening the whole thing at once.
That's what I was wondering too.
So we actually are going to be, the line that's in the creek will remain operational until we're ready to connect those businesses. So you can actually have your sequencing set up, and there was one of the exhibits that actually kind of spoke on the sequencing, but one thing to consider is, you open up 200-300 feet, you put the pipe in, you get your, joint seals connected, you have everything tested, backfilled, compacted, and let's say it's 3 o'clock and you've got it backfilled and compacted. Okay, well then you either have, for a 200-300 foot segment, you say sidewalk closed, or you can put trench plates down. There's a couple of options that you can do. And then the next day you have your concrete crew right behind you forming up and pouring. And then you move to the next segment. So it can become almost like a train on how you do the sequencing.
Okay. And then I've got one other question that's probably going to make you cringe, but I just want to know why not just encase the sewer main in concrete? Would that not stop I&I from happening and be a lot easier?
Well, so the 2014 design is encased in concrete. The crossings are. It's deep, but the design actually didn't make it even deep enough. As far as encasing it in concrete, it would be easier, but when it comes to repair and maintenance, that's rough. You really only do concrete encasement when you absolutely have to.
Okay. So it would take care of the I&I problem, but it would
be a future
for
maintenance headache and any kind of repairs, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Rebecca?
I do have one. A couple. If you were to move it into the street, how close would it be to the water line at that point?
It varies.
Approximately.
5 to 10 feet in some areas, but more than that. More than that. The water's on the south side.
Okay.
And then that's why we put the sewer on the north side.
is it likely to get a waiver?
Yeah, I mean, we have a decent shot at it. Like I said, I just didn't want to lead with that because I radar since the beginning of Measure H&L.
And so we have several new people who are kind of
Yes.
new to this here.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to just bring some awareness. We have a committee of citizens of our community that we have about $2+ million a year that we can use, that we use for road, sewer, and water maintenance and repair and replacement. And it's broken up. It's much more broken up than just that simple way. But so that committee reviews everything that comes before our engineering department, and they work in concert together, and nothing gets done until our committee actually approves it. And so it is done, it's a citizens, and we have one sitting right here, and I'm sure she'll be speaking on this and supporting it, but it is a very rigorous process that we go through with the city that was put in place to, I don't want to say protect, but to involve our community in the process of how we spend these sales tax dollars that come in on an annual basis. So it's a great program. We have great support from our Measure H and Measure L community committee. So thank you to them as well for participation in this, because I know a lot of thought and consideration goes into this before it actually gets to this point. So thank you.
That's a good point. Thanks for making that. All right. I don't see any other questions for Rebecca, so we'll open this item up to the public at this time.
Sue Rodman, Measure H and Measure L Committee, and we have had this on our radar since we passed Measure H. This is one of the very first things we put on the agenda, get the sewer lines out of the creek, and especially, first of all, get it out of Hangtown Creek, and then get it out of Cedar Ravine Creek, and any other creek that's got sewer lines in it. And so this is really wonderful to see. I think that this hybrid option sounds like absolutely the best thing to put together for this. This is, I thought, going 20 feet deep under the creek and then under the trail, I thought, oh, that's just asking for trouble. This looks like a really great alternative. So as far as I'm concerned, kudos for Rebecca and her crew for putting this together, because I think this is a really good alternative that will actually work and solve the problem and continue to work long term. So great.
Thank you, Sue. Any other comments on item 12.3? Seeing none, I will close public comment on this and bring it back to the council for further discussion. Rebecca, do you need us to provide direction on which alternative and option that we prefer, or could we just?
That would be great if you did. I think the intent was that if there was, any red flags or any concerns that you had with us pursuing the Main Street alternative, that we be able to have a conversation, and if it really didn't sit well, then okay, we're off base and we can make a course correction. It was really just an opportunity to kind of daylight that and get your feedback. And I heard a lot of feedback actually in the questions you asked, which was great. I will definitely be looking into the waiver and a lot of consideration for the businesses, which is part of our SOP when we do projects anyway. We get permits to enter and construct, which that is the point where we go and see the property owner. Here's where we're going to be. Here's how we're going to be working around your property. Here's how we're going to be working within your property. Do you have any restrictions or limitations? And then that's the point where they say, oh, we're closed Monday, Tuesday. Could you please allow deliveries on Thursday, et cetera? And then we make those concessions, and we actually put it in the contract specifications. It's a requirement for the contractor.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there any road frontage improvement agreements that are going to be triggered with this that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And will there be a cost to the property owners if we're going to be going across their property?
Potentially, but as of right now, none have been identified.
What's that? What type of, when you say potentially, what type of things fall in that category without getting too specific, probably?
Yeah, so I mean, we're kind of mixing a little bit of apples and oranges because of the sewer project. If there was a street frontage improvement agreement, just for the public's understanding, a street frontage improvement agreement comes along when the required frontage improvements for a property, which get triggered by getting a building permit or doing tenant improvements, things like that, when the required frontage improvements are too much of either a hardship on the property owner, or they are currently not necessary, or they're not on the radar of a city future pedestrian project or what have you. Through that process, there is a variance to those frontage improvements, and that's what creates the street frontage improvement agreement. It's essentially the deferment of required frontage improvements triggered by a building permit. So if there is a street frontage improvement agreement, what we have on hand is an agreement from that property owner promising to put in curb, gutter, and sidewalk. And if it is able to be done as part of a project, as we've done with other property owners, there is an economies of scale savings for that as well. If we're pouring, 1,000 feet of sidewalk and then we need to add in, 35 for this property owner, he's going to get a better deal than if we don't include it and they have to go out and hire somebody else. But we try to be sensitive to that.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to add to that. The other thing that I would see potentially, Councilmember, is if we discovered something during our project that was unrelated to our project, maybe building damage or even their private sewer line in some areas, if there was a portion of that we were not cutting into that was not up to par, we would probably want to let them know and then probably require them to replace that. So those are some potential costs that I could see that could happen.
Didn't we run into that before on one of the main street? I know some of the businesses had to upgrade their sewer because discovered that the sewer line
could have been likely. Yeah. So that's where you could see some potential
and
costs.
And it's for their benefit, you know.
But if we chose to reroute the laterals, to come to the front,
right,
like in the 2-3 option, that would not trigger an expense to the property owners per se?
That would be considered a project expense, not a private expense, because we are the project, the city's project is the nexus necessitating that change in direction for the service.
Good question.
So the $500,000 is coming out of Measure L funding for this tranche of financing for this project is not included. Measure L, $500,000. Isn't that what we're looking for?
No, there's no budget appropriation for this.
What am I? That's the to date encumbrance. So associated with this.
No. There is not.
Okay.
If you feel like adding $500,000, that's fine. That's certainly get us started.
You go talk to Sue about adding $500,000.
Oh, are you kidding me?
And then come back and talk to me.
Sue's amazing. She'd have a bake sale for this baby right now if she could.
All right. Sorry about that.
To be clear, there's no cost to receive and file and provide direction to staff. But when this project goes out to bid,
then there will be costs.
Well, when we come back with the proposal for the design cost, we'll come back with a cost at that time.
Right.
Okay.
And what's when is this on the calendar for being completed?
It kind of depends upon the construction funding. So actually, to your point, Councilmember Thomas, we have $620,000 in funding on the project, and we've utilized $302,000. So we have a little over $300,000 left on our project budget. That's a decent amount to go after some final design work. Then, based on how long that takes, we're still going to be actively looking for and pursuing grants. There's a lot of opportunity with this project just because it's a water quality issue and it's a infrastructure project, and it does present some resiliency for the city's infrastructure. These are good things to have on a grant application. But while we're going through design, that's the point where we apply for grant funding.
And that $2 million, give or take, is construction costs and not any of the planning and design work?
Correct. That did
Okay.
not include
That's where I was
soft
going with
costs,
that. Okay.
is your question, yeah.
I think I'm done.
Okay. One final comment from me, and then I'd entertain a motion if no one has further comments. I think intuitively, the 2-3 option seems to make the most sense, and I'm in favor of moving the trunk to Main Street instead of putting it 20 feet deep under the trail. I would be open to any option, though, that minimizes the impact to the businesses, and if that means putting it under Main Street and leaving the sidewalk open, or not doing the way it is in that 2-3 option, I think, just being sensitive to what a prolonged construction project could do to those businesses would be my preference.
You'd be surprised. It's painful when it happens, but and then you get through it. We redid all of Main Street and had it torn
And I
up, and all the
remember-
alleys and everything. And
Right.
I remember
It was tough.
owning the farm table when there was some
Yeah.
construction work, and it was
It's tough.
pretty brutal
Yep.
on business.
Yeah, you get through it, but yeah, it is tough.
you do get through it, but
But this is different because it's not affecting the
Yeah.
traffic flow. I mean,
right.
It's a give and
so
take.
it's a different situation.
So, okay.
I'll make a motion to give staff direction to go with option 2-3 hybrid.
Second?
All right. We have a first and a second. Can we get a roll call, Regina?
Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember No.
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza.
Aye.
Mayor Taylor.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Good discussion on that. So moving on to item 12.4. This is to adopt a resolution. So this resolution kind of rearranges some staffing in the engineering department, and I will let our city engineer take it away.
Thank you. So, yes, as you are aware, the engineering department has been without some dedicated analytical and administration support to the programs and services we provide for quite some time, since the retirements of 3 key staff members in 2020, primarily tied to the pandemic impacts. So with this 50% reduction of the engineering division, which is your third floor staffing, all operations and programs have been supported by the remaining staff, which consists of 2 associate engineers and myself, as well as shared time of the secretary of the city manager. God bless Aaron, and thank you, Cleve. In the last 2 years, though, the workload, much like it has been for any and every department, it's increased steadily due to state requirements and mandates related to permitting, project delivery of federally and state-funded projects. They're requiring significantly more regular reporting. It used to be quarterly, now it's turned monthly, and things like that. Furthermore, because of the reduction in staff and counter coverage, the department public hours were also reduced in May of 2021. So what this did was it allowed staff to address the floor coverage shortage, given if there's any kind of illnesses or vacations, and remaining closed on Fridays to the public as an opportunity for staff to catch up on critical tasks. Some of the tasks that we've actually taken on since the retirements in 2020 include GIS mapping, which provides all the mapping and support services for Public Works and all the other departments related to our facilities maps, processing of vendor invoices, city facility projects, public outreach and information, budget reporting, general administration, and code enforcement. So all these tasks, in one way or another, were once covered by 3 other people. So the intent of the amended engineering specialist position is actually to backfill all of those existing needs within the engineering department and ultimately support the essential functions to the other departments as well, while still remaining efficient in staffing, resources, and out of consideration for our city budget. The amended engineering specialist position will cover what we need, and related duties are considered technical in nature, so they require the ideal candidate to actually go above and beyond the current job description. Some of the larger items that were upgraded as part of that job description is, we tailor-made the job description to fit those tasks that I mentioned. It also requires a college degree, and it requires a little higher level of education because, as I mentioned before, we're definitely going to be pursuing grants to help our local dollars stretch further on projects. So at this time, the staff report does a great job of summarizing the intended steps schedules for the salary schedule for the engineering specialist. And the engineering specialist is estimated to have a 70% cost recovery. And what that means is they can actually bill to ongoing projects instead of, their salary and their benefits being paid primarily out of general fund. The other position is to capture a part-time administrative secretary position, which would provide some critical office-level support and customer service. They could cover counter hours, ongoing department programs such as encroachment permits, et cetera. This position, which is allotted 20 hours per week, is estimated at a 50% recovery. So 10% would be, 10 hours of their 20-hour week would be on the general fund, and 10 hours of their week would be billable to applicable projects and permitting. So that covers my staff report. The job description is included in your agenda packet, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Rebecca. Do we have any questions?
Yes, I do. The cost recovery right now, is that being outsourced and expensed outside of the department, or is that being handled in I know that's a broad question on projects varying depending on what you're doing, but is that some of that being end up outside right now, or is that still being handled inside?
It's actually being done both.
Okay.
And then there's actually a third part of this is some of it's just not getting done.
I guess the question. Oh dear, that explains that crooked road.
Yeah.
I guess the question is that cost being incurred internally right now, and you guys are working overtime to do it, or is most of those on projects and being contracted out? Some of that work.
We are, for example, engineering inspections, which this engineering specialist position could cover, are being completely outsourced right now through our on-call contract. I see that contract being significantly reduced. I don't see it going away altogether because, as I mentioned, there's a whole host of other tasks that actually just haven't really even been done. And I'll actually point to our GIS mapping. Our GIS mapping supports just about every single department. We have facility maps for public works. We have planning and zoning and general plan maps that we provide to planning and Pierre's department. We have maps that we provide to PD. We have, information related to, different programs to finance, et cetera. So it really kind of touches on almost every department. And, I say this with just the most heartfelt appreciation. Corey and Melissa are just a godsend. Corey had almost no GIS experience, but he had a lot of AutoCAD and drafting and design experience. So he was able to learn, on his own, he learned ArcGIS and figured out how to maneuver the program. All of the project invoicing, and I mentioned before that our projects have multiple funding sources often. The bulk of federal and state project and program oversight, Melissa has taken on that, and that is a lot. I used to joke that we were down to fighting weight, but we're actually a little tired. We're a little skinny right now. So having this position would help us backfill some of that needed resources and energy for the rest of us too. Many hands make light work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Well, I'll just make a comment to our planning department in the next agenda item, but I know that you all are incredibly understaffed and working really hard, and we appreciate it. We know that it's been an increase of workload and a decrease in staff available to do it, and we really appreciate it, and I think we're going to try to get you the help that you need. So with that, we are going to open it up to public comment on item 12.4. All right. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council for more discussion or a motion.
I'll make a motion, and normally I don't read through all these, but since it's a few things here, I'll go ahead and just list these out. So I'll make a recommendation to abolish the current FTE assistant engineer position, to approve the amended job description and salary range for the FTE engineering specialist position for fiscal year 21-22. and approve the part-time FTE administrative secretary position for the 21-22 operating budget, and lastly, approve and affirm a new salary schedule effective March 5th, 2022.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Gina, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I know you need it. And our community needs it too, because, the staffing shortages affects people that are trying to build, affects people that are trying to pull permits. It's not good. We need to staff appropriately. So that brings us to a similar item, 12.5. And this is a resolution to approve a building official position for the Department of Development Services. And Mr. Rivas.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Staff is requesting that the council reinstate the building official position in the Development Services Department for fiscal year 21-22 to be within the operating budget. Following the recruitment of the building official on December 30th of 2013 and an unsuccessful recruitment for a building official in December of 2013, the city modified the existing professional services agreement that the city had with Interwest Consulting Group. On June 2nd of 2014, expanding general building division services included building official, plan check, inspection, and other related services. Those other related services primarily being counter assistance to the public or looking at the various code updates in the building code. The city has been utilizing Interwest for plan check and inspection services under contract on an as-needed basis to assist the city's building official. In between the time the building official retired from the city in December 13th of 2013 through fiscal year 2018 through 2019, the building official position was vacant and funded in the city's operating budget each year. The budget savings from the vacant building official position was used to offset the costs of the Interwest contract for building inspection plan check services during that time. In an effort to clearly show the Interwest contract in the city's budget, the city unfunded the building official position and funded the Interwest contract under the contractual services budget line item beginning in fiscal year 1920 through fiscal year 21-22. On November 18th of 2021, the city received a letter from Interwest, which has been acquired by a larger company called SafeBuild Company, stating that the work being performed under the billing rate structure was no longer financially feasible for Interwest. SafeBuild. The city's fee schedule has not been updated since 2008, and Interwest hourly rate schedule had not been updated since 2014. The fees collected under the city's adopted fee schedule will not cover the expenses of the new charges for the outside professional services, especially the building official services. Without renegotiating a new professional services agreement with the new billing rates, the November 18th, 2021 date constitutes a 60-day notice to terminate. Staff negotiated with Interwest to continue to provide services through the end of this month. It is staff's opinion that the increase in the cost of outside professional services and the increase in building activity justify the reestablishment of the building official position. Staff proposes to negotiate a professional services agreement for plan check and inspections on an as-needed basis only, mainly for large commercial projects and workload demands. Staff plans on utilizing Interwest services through the end of March, until such time as the building official position is filled. And those services from Interwest would primarily be building inspection. Staff also plans on returning to the council at a later date with an updated fee schedule for building services to better cover the operational costs of the building division. The annual cost of the building official position is projected to be about $124,000 a year, which is well within the annual budget of $190,000 we had budgeted for contractual services for Interwest. So with that, staff is recommending that the council adopt a resolution approving one FTE building official position in the Department of Development Services for the fiscal year 21-22 operating budget. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you, Pierre. So just to clarify, this is not adding more staff to your team. It's just really changing out a service that we've had that we're not going to be able to use a third-party contractor for anymore.
Yes, that is correct. When our previous building official, our in-house city employee building official retired, and we were not successful in acquiring a building official for that position, we then expanded the contract we already had with Interwest to provide for full service, including a building official. So with our city employee building official, that means we'll be only using Interwest on an as-needed basis. Say, for example, I could use the hotel as an example. We wouldn't be able to put our building official full-time on that hotel project. Mm-hmm. We would have to farm that out. Okay. Or if there's certain times where we get extremely busy, or if there's vacations we get behind in inspections, it's very important those inspections occur on a regular basis when they're requested by the building contractor. So in those cases also we could use inspection services, okay, which are, of course, much cheaper than the building official position.
Okay. How many positions are open right now in the planning department?
Let's see, the building official position, the city planner position.
Okay.
2.
So those are positions that, if we approve this, that have been budgeted for, but we're not spending the money because there's nobody in that position right now.
I would say that would be a savings, but the city planner division is separate from the building division, okay, in our budget, and so we wanted to make a clear point, and we had Mr. Warren of our finance department. He thoroughly went over the numbers, and we're clearly within our ability to hire and be within the budget of the current amount that we apply for the contractual services.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm still not, I don't think, you when you were reading this, you kind of left this out, and you said that the services for where it was 85, it went from 85 to 155? Was that the
Yes, that was just one example. I didn't, provide the fee schedules for everything, but primarily the building official did increase from $85 per hour to $155 per hour.
That's a huge jump.
So we essentially are doing without a building official currently, unless, of course, there's the need for an interpretation of the building code, and then we make the request of Interwest, and then we get an answer for that. But other than that, we do not have an in-house building official.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. We'll open this up to public comment on item 12.5. All right. Seeing no public comment, we'll bring it back to the council for a motion or discussion.
I'll move that we adopt a resolution approving one FTE building official position in the Department of Development Services for fiscal year 2021-2022 operating budget.
I'll second.
All right. We have a first and a second. Ms. O'Connell, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember No.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza.
Aye.
Mayor Taylor.
Aye.
Thank you very much, Council. And Mayor, if I can just make one quick comment. I think we will realize a much improvement in service to the public, because we're continually having new employees from Interwest come in, and there's always that learning curve or getting used to how the city of Placerville does things. So I think with our own building official, we'll be able to provide a more coherent and be able to provide, services that are consistent instead of, somebody has a different opinion on how something should be. So thank you very much. I think it's going to be very helpful to the operation of our department.
Yeah, I hope it is, and I hope that it alleviates some pressures inside the department too.
Thank you.
Okay, this is, sorry, I've lost track. I'm missing. Let me look at the agenda. Okay.
I was going to say, I think you left something out.
I was looking at the pile and not the agenda. Okay, so that brings us to item 13, council reports from other agencies. El Dorado County Transit Authority. All right, and the same thing with the El Dorado County Transportation Commission, unless you have anything to add? No? Okay. LAFCO?
Meets tomorrow.
Okay. SACOG?
We had a presentation from California Transportation Commission, as well as a representative from Biden administration on federal funding. Obviously, lots of opportunities right now within ARPA, as well as just other funding sources that are out there. CTC really giving us, I think, a briefing on what I would call the change in direction at CTC to a more transit and pedestrian-oriented organization. Which is sort of disturbing because they're talking about even repurposing some SB1 dollars for other types of projects, which could mean taking money from like highways and streets and into maybe mass transit, things like that. So there could be some good stuff there, but on the other hand, for anyone that that drives our freeways knows that we still need a ton of dollars into those as well. So sort of an interesting discussion there. More to come.
That is interesting because, Jackie and I are on the Transit Authority, and ridership is going down dramatically at the same time that funding priorities are going to bolster up a service that is getting used less and less.
Yep.
So.
Like I said, I take that bus, El Dorado Transit. I buy my $100 packet of tickets and I use them throughout the year. And like I said, at one point there was 2 of us on the bus going down the hill.
Isn't that? Yeah.
And they were happy when my wife and I got on because we were 2 new people that had never been on there before. And but when we came back on a 4:00 bus, there was about 12 people, which is a little bit better. But yeah, it's because of the pandemic and just the changing of
the government offices
work patterns. Yeah,
right. And tonight, before I left, I had the news on, and there is a big push trying to get Sacramento to open the government offices again.
Correct, Mayor Steinberg.
Because there's so many, not just transit, but all those businesses around there are just closing their doors, and it's just, they've been trying so hard to improve that whole district, and now it's just kind of like going back down again, and so it's had a real negative effect.
It is, and I know, you're buying those new buses.
I know.
Big expenses for something that isn't being used.
Right,
so yeah,
isn't being used.
Well, now they want us to go electric.
Right.
And so
they're buying a whole new fleet of electric buses.
Yeah, and those LNGs are perfectly fine, in my opinion, but that's a whole other story.
Okay. Thank you for that update. And Pioneer?
Pioneer. They did a great job of kind of their state of the utility address, and they went through what they've done so far and what one of their vision statement that we worked on previously, and as a matter of fact, when I filled in for you, we worked on that, and it's a community partner in reliable energy solutions and positive local impact, power today and empowering tomorrow. And I tell you, I own an independent business that's in a sea of chain businesses, and I feel like this, we go that extra mile to provide that extra. This is not an advertisement, but a pet comparison. We go that extra mile to provide a lot of additional services, and just show that hometown feel when they come in. And I really feel like Pioneer Energy is is putting their best foot forward to be that type of person for the communities that they support. And so
How would they do that, Dennis? Give me a little example.
Well, you can call them up and you can talk to a person.
Oh, I've told so many people that.
Right.
I have told
they're working on this year. They're going to be developing programs, more programs for interaction with us in terms of redeploying a website, hiring more staff for interaction with their communities. If they're looking at doing acquisitions, they've actually turned down acquisitions for other areas because they did not have the same mindset we had in terms of how we want to run this company.
Okay.
It's a very professionally run company. Wouldn't you agree, Michael? I mean, these guys are top notch.
Yes, absolutely.
They listen to the concerns. They do community outreach. They're going to be doing more community outreach to find out what people want. First of all, you want to flip your switch and the lights come on. I mean, everybody wants that. That's the basic. And different things like green programs where 100% of your money is spent on green programs. They only had so many people sign up, but they did that. And they're looking at relief for fire victims and different things like that in terms of how they're going about it. They're also a huge advocate on behalf of the city, the residents of the communities they serve with PG&E that you wouldn't otherwise get. You're just on your own with PG&E. So it's they're that voice yelling for us. So it's and they have a whole different part of their business that is advocating with the PUC and writing letters and supporting us.
How do we get that message out to our constituents? Because quite honestly, I've had quite a number, and I'm sure all of you have, folks that they still don't get it. They just don't understand what this is all about. And that's when I've asked, I've tried to tell them, but I've suggested that they call and that, these folks are willing to talk with them. But I don't think the message is really out there. And the things that you just mentioned should be some of the things that should be relayed to the folks.
And they recognize that in the amount of take rate. Now, the take rate that we have received is pretty good, actually. It's sitting around 89-point-something%.
That's good.
In terms of people who, so conversely, approximately 10-point-something% of the people have called and said, I don't want Pioneer Energy for one reason or another. Now, some of those may be people with solar that didn't like the way that's going, but we're actually a little better off in the city than in the county in terms of the take rate. But they recognize that there's still community engagement, and they have that's part of the programs for this year is working on that as well.
Good.
So, yeah.
And part of that too might just be, as more people join and sign up and like it, word will get out.
Well, I think the whole thing, it started out is they were going to save us a whole bunch of money, and that isn't happening, obviously.
Well, then they did, and then they didn't, and now
Exact-
it's going to save money again. PG&E really enjoys this space because they can mess with us.
Okay.
And that's honestly, that's what they've been doing.
Well, and I'll also add that today PG&E went back again to the PUC for another rate increase.
I saw that.
On top of the rate increases that have already happened.
I saw that.
A couple of times. So you can probably expect even a third rate increase from PG&E in 20.
Is that for power or for delivery?
I believe it's for
their maintenance
delivery.
of the lines and everything.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Which is an easier argument for them to
Right.
Exactly.
to get the
Right.
PUC
Especially,
to say yay. Yeah.
Right.
And we're looking on doing long-term power purchase agreements, going into this coming year, so that it so it does stabilize our cost for energy as well, and keeps it down with some discounts that way. So it's a lot's going on.
Good.
All right, great, thanks for that. Placerville Fire Safe Council?
Well, there's a lot going on with the council. I'm not going to go into all that. But I again want to just remind the public that on Saturday, March 19th, we're going to have a presentation, the Placerville Fire Safe Council and the City of Placerville preparing for wildfire season. And Sue is a member of that council, of the the group too, and we're just stressing all of this. And this was in this, I don't know if everybody saw this, it was included in your water bill, reminding you, but we're just, they were really doing a bang-up job, and the folks that they have, I think they've actually run out of room to have one more display, so it'll be great to have all that information.
Oh, sorry. Can you say that date again? Date and location?
Saturday, March 19th from 10 to 3.
Right here.
Right here.
Yeah.
And it's going to be indoors and outdoors.
There's going to be hot dogs.
I'm there.
So there you go. That's the one reason they,
That's
if
your big
anything,
takeaway.
that's a big takeaway. Rotary is going to do hot dogs. So
All right, it will be a great event.
Can I maybe just add to that? You know, bring your kids out too. They're going to have fire engines.
Absolutely.
Police will have equipment out here.
And we're going to have
the
giveaways.
Giveaways, yeah.
Color books and crayons.
Right,
and,
right. So lots of things going on.
Pardon me?
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
Smokey the Bear.
Oh,
Yes.
Smokey the Bear, yeah.
All right, the city county 2x2. Michael and I met with Chair Parlin and Supervisor Wendy Thomas and discussed funding the pool options, homelessness, and a couple of parcels within the city limits that has some interesting tax and bond issues. It was a good discussion.
Good.
Opportunity knocks.
yeah, so this is what we were talking about at the beginning of today's council meeting. Opportunity Knocks presented their plan. It's a very detailed plan that unfortunately it doesn't. I just was checking my email right now. I haven't gotten a response from EDOC board yet in terms of extending the period out. I don't believe they're going to do that, but I do think we as a city council need to have a unified voice on how we respond to that. So even if it's after when they're taking public opinions, I still think it's important for us to provide that response back. Because even though the period was short, it took us, almost 3 years to get here to this point to get that document out. And the reality is this report isn't going to be implemented tomorrow or March 5th. So there's going to be time to still work and to do things, and I think it's going to be incumbent upon EDOC, where I sit and the mayor is the alternate, to really keep pushing that message so that there's a more inclusive process as well as an opportunity for the jurisdictions to weigh in at an adequate level. So more to come as we go forward here.
It was strikingly obvious the lack of recognition of the impact on the city within that report.
Yes.
Based on my reading of it.
Yes, it's yes.
Michael, do you know when the next EDOC meeting is?
It will be the. So what are we? We're the second.
I thought that it was normally, Jackie, maybe you would know, I thought it was normally a Friday.
First
but
Friday of the month.
First Friday of
First
the month?
Friday.
Okay.
But it's not every month. But then they were talking about having more meetings because of the strategic plan, so I don't know if they
Yeah.
added.
Okay.
I'm trying to recall. I think there was a dates on that last one, but I don't recall what the next one is.
Okay.
I can send something out, but I don't know what that next date is.
I was just wondering if it corresponded with their deadline for public comment, if they were going to take that public comment and then decide to approve or amend the strategic plan, or?
I don't think. I mean, unless that was a special meeting that we had, that was my first one. But it would fall within less than a month if that was the case. So I'm not sure what that date, how that date links up with the next meeting. I don't think it does.
All right. Hopefully we can get some answers from them about that.
Yep.
Is there any, they can do whatever they want with this as an independent agency and board. And they can set the timelines however they want without there's no governing expectation, there's no governing requirements for them to have X number of days for public comment like we would with the EIR or things like that. No.
They're set up actually under federal law, so it's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you look at the Placer County homeless plan, they interviewed each of the Board of Supervisors, they interviewed each of the law enforcements, and kind of created a matrix of overlapping issues that people had and concerns, and that's missing from our plan completely. So I have a lot of concerns.
So does the squeaky wheel get the grease? I mean, maybe we should be, can we scream a little louder? And bring it to maybe the public is not understanding, maybe.
Well, I don't think EDOC understands either. I think we have to, as a council, present to them our problems, our issues, everything that they're not thinking about that are important to us, and problems in our jurisdiction.
Okay.
All right. Anything else to report? No? Okay. So 14 future agenda items. Do we want to consider having a special meeting if we are not able to have a meeting?
I think we should really consider it, give this the extension, then I think we really should plan on a meeting.
I think we should just put it in our regular meeting. I don't think that we should be pressured to, hurry up and do this fast turnaround because they haven't done their job ahead of time. It kind of speaks to how much they're really going to take our consideration in the first place. So are we going to hurry up and they're just going to ignore it too?
The problem with doing a special meeting is, I would anticipate, doing a presentation of some sort, hopefully by someone at EDOC, and then taking public feedback that we use to formulate our own statement. And you don't really get that at a special meeting. Very few people show up. So I would...
Yeah, I think...
I'm certainly open to doing a special meeting. I just
Depends
don't
on
know
the topic,
how effective.
but...
Yeah, I'm not sure how effective it
I'm
will be. I get it.
I'm certainly happy, and I think, Madam Mayor, you would be as well to, read something into the record at the next EDOC, or, whenever the timing might, match up, whether that's in, board member comments or somewhere along the line, because I still think there's ways to get something into the record regardless of whether it's on their very short deadline.
Well, then I'm not understanding. I thought you guys wanted more. I thought you wanted input, and I don't know any other way to get it there before they make a decision.
Well, a strategic plan is also not a set in stone document. And so I don't know that, I'm just sitting here contemplating our conversation and kind of thinking this through, because I was a little irritated that they went through all these years of doing this, and then they throw it out there, and in 3 weeks they want to wrap it up. And at the same time, it's a strategic plan is a living document. It should be a living document. This shouldn't be the last time they do this. Yeah. And I guarantee you, if we express our concerns and issues that we have at the city that aren't addressed in there, they're going to have to reevaluate their strategic plan. And I have a feeling the county's going to feel the same way.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, the plan as I've read it so far is sort of the stars must align plan. And so the stars rarely align. Mm-hmm. And so there's going to be some sort of real politique to this anyways, of how do we deal with what's in front of us versus, how we want to actually do something in a perfect setting. And so in that sense, I think it will be a living document, or it will be a document that's very well thought of, but it sits on a shelf because that perfect environment never comes into fruition. And so we have to deal with what reality is versus, like reading something out of a textbook versus, actually having to do something in real life.
So without discussing too much on the strategic plan, what's the consensus of the board in terms of having a special meeting versus not having a special meeting? We can certainly all submit comments to be read at the board meeting.
I'm flexible with the board wants.
Yeah, I don't see us, based on their lack of willingness to even bend on that to begin with, or, recognition that it's going to take longer. I don't know how much they're concerned about what we say.
Well, do we know that they're not? Maybe they will bend, and then we can have it at the next meeting.
I got feedback from the Board of Supervisors meeting today that,
they didn't.
and I think, was it you, Cleve, that we talked
Yeah.
about, that they were not,
They willing to,
right.
That was during the actual presentation part earlier in the meeting.
Yeah, there's a
They
whole-
did have a discussion later in the day, starting after 3 o'clock, but I don't think any of us were able to listen to that, so I don't know any comments were made.
I don't want to cast any dispersions.
Yeah.
So would we like to have this at a regular council meeting, even though it may be after their deadline? So that we can still have a discussion and put a statement out?
well, if it's
on
not
behalf
going
of
to do
the
any
city.
good, I don't want to waste my time
I don't want
talking
to waste
about
all
it.
these people's
That's-
time
I
out
know,
here
that's exactly.
to do this
And that's a
because
good point, because that was a 2-hour presentation.
Well, I think that we could certainly say 20 minutes or something like that.
half an hour plus discussion.
Yeah, there's-
public comment.
There's probably about 4 slides out of 50 that
And what
we
would-
really would need to focus on.
And what would we gain? I mean, what would we
Knowledge
gain?
of what they're doing, how they're doing it, and how it interacts with this. We put, I don't know how much, 30,000, 15,000 into this?
We gave them,
15,000?
15 or 15
Yeah, it was
or
30,
20.
it was
I'm trying to-
15 from
yeah.
the city,
I think it was
15
two.
from
I think it was 10,000 2 years in a row.
10.
something like
That sound right, Dave?
So I think we really need to just make a decision right now if you want this at a special meeting, a regular meeting, and then.
Or not at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or not at all.
I'm in favor, I think that we should daylight it to our constituents, and, be able to discuss it and come up with a
I
joint
think
statement.
at a council meeting, yeah.
Regular council meeting?
Regular.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Yeah, just quick question on that. So do you want, actually, the two of you can do that. Are you going to request that they do a presentation at that meeting still? So should we plan on
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
Next meeting?
20.
On the 8th, March 8th meeting?
Yes.
They really have to.
Yeah, they got to hone it in, yeah.
Yeah, we can work with you on that.
Okay.
Let's figure it out. Okay.
All right.
Now to your favorite topic.
15, city manager and staff reports. So this, we have the sales tax update. And is this a receive and file? Dave, do you want to say anything about this?
Sure. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. So, great return for the quarter ending September 30th, 2021. You may recall we built in about a 4.1% increase overall for your sales taxes for this fiscal year, and it actually came in for that first quarter of the fiscal year on the cash basis for your Bradley Burns, which is your general fund sales tax, at 13.2%. And then when you adjust for reporting aberrations, it came in about 12.5. So about 4 times of what we, or 3 times what we budgeted. And then your add-on taxes, measure H, J, and L, on the cash basis, 19% and 21% adjusted for aberrations. The devil's kind of in the details. On the report that shows by business type, you can see that fuel, for example, up 35%. A good part of that is because your base is inflated. The price of fuel has gone up, and other things too. But restaurants, good news. As we pull out of the pandemic, they experienced about almost a 27% increase, which is great. But overall, I do want to caution the council that inflation has played a role in this, and that may not last. It's kind of reaching unsustainable levels. So, and then on your top 25, we did pick up Placerville Polaris. So they've been on your top 25 before, but they're back on. Big Lots in Ferguson dropped off, and then Chuck's Cannabis Collective was a first for them. So they're on the top 25. We appreciate all, especially our top 25. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Dave?
One that I was surprised to see go down was a building. Where did I see it? Or did I misread that?
Material costs are.
Material and.
Yeah. That's a great observation because, excuse me, during the pandemic, you may recall.
I kept telling you, just go to Home Depot and you can
Just
see
go to
the-
home. You could smell the money when you walked in that place.
Right.
But it was very busy, and the reason for that, folks were doing home improvement projects.
Right.
They were stuck at home, sheltering in place, and so a lot of people ended up doing improvements, replacing appliances. So we saw a spike in 2020 And then in 21, it was more normal. So even though it shows a decrease of about 2.7%,
Right.
it's just more normal growth, offset by a very strong year, believe it or not. I mean, even though it was during the pandemic, building and construction costs or sales went up quite a bit in 20.
So when we start building our housing and hotels, and it's all going to go back up, right?
Yeah, knock on wood.
So it looks like the online sales, the portion of those taxes that we receive has stabilized with this report, or?
Yes. So you're seeing what the economists, their hypothesis is that online sales will continue to be strong, but maybe not as strong. So people coming back to the stores, the brick and mortar, and buying more in person. But I believe the online will continue to stay strong going forward.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, 12.5 increase is great, but a lot of that, and you kind of alluded to this, a lot of that is just a factor that prices, everything costs more.
That's
so
correct.
as things cost more, we get more in sales tax.
Right.
But
right.
things also cost more for us, so it's not.
Sure.
Exactly. And,
as great as it sounds.
the economy goes up and down. When it goes down, it could be a little bit of a double whammy because you have a decrease in sales and then the decrease in price as well. So it could hurt going down more from that. Yeah.
And what you are going to caution us on is not to build ongoing expenses into our budget so much that we get that and we can't control it on the way back.
Thank you. That's a great observation. That we're going to enjoy this little infusion, big infusion actually, but you don't want to count on those dollars in the future. It could be a flash in the pan going forward. Part of it anyway.
And just out of curiosity, what is that dollar amount more than what we anticipated in our budget?
Well, we budgeted a 4% increase. You got a 12 so far. This is just one quarter. So the 8%, that's extra growth that we didn't count on. So going forward, and HDL helps us when we build our forecast going forward. But part of that, for one-time purposes would be a good use. But as far as ongoing uses, especially as we go into fiscal year 22-23, showing my age, we'll definitely want to be very cautious in considering the growth of sales tax going forward.
Okay. All right. So that was, thank you, Dave, for highlighting those parts of the report. That was a receive and file. And that brings us to item 16, upcoming agenda items. There's a long list, and I will let folks read that at home on the agenda that's available online. And item 17 is adjournment. We will end this meeting tonight at 7:11. So thank you all who showed up here and made comments. That's really appreciated.